if I were to start over again, I would probably take the same route. And I get a lot of people asking me, well, if you were to start over again, would you do a boot camp? If you were to start over, would you, take like the Udacity Nano degree, like all of these different topics and areas. And personally, I'm like, look.
Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Alex the Analyst. Alex is a friend of mine and is currently a data analyst at a Fortune 500 company. He also happens to have an awesome YouTube channel where he talks about his experience as a data analyst and gives advice on how to break into that career path. It's linked below. In this episode, you'll learn how Alex got his start as a data analyst, his thoughts on data science versus data analytics, and how he is dividing all of LinkedIn with his posts. Enjoy. Alex, thank you so much for coming in. You have a pretty incredibly fast-growing YouTube channel all about your experience as a data analyst, which is, like stomping on my toes as a data scientist. So I feel like we're coming to a head. We're gonna kind of slug it out during this conversation, and talk a lot about the difference between the career paths. Talk about some of your experience growing in that space and as a content creator. And I'm just really happy to have you in and really excited to have a kind of fun, energetic, and lively conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. For whatever reason, I don't know how this came to be, but there's some unhidden or some hidden rivalry between us, which was not on my part by any means, I promise you. And so hopefully this will be a cordial conversation. We'll see as it goes along, what what happens.
I think some of the people over at How to Get a Analytics Job podcast are just spreading rumors, and they're kind of stoking a flame that didn't exist. So
they're trying to drive some audience.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think that is kind of fun for us to talk about the differences. And, if we do have different opinions on anything between the two professions, or, if our approach is different because of our backgrounds, that's always something fascinating to me. That's not something in my mind we should hide from. That's something we should bring to the front and talk about, because that's how you grow as an analyst, as a data scientist in your career, is kind of coming to terms with things that you might not have, that might change your perspective or whatever that might be. So I want to start off by just getting a bit more of your background. How did you get into the data analytics field? How did you become an analyst? And, was your lifelong goal, or was that just like a place you ended up,
I feel like, if anything, this is probably the more interesting thing about me that's going to come up throughout this conversation. I definitely did not plan on ever going in anything computer related, tech related, analytics related. I was pre-med when I went to school, and then, I switched very quickly into like the therapy area. Blood just was not for me, apparently. And so I was like, I still want to help people. I still want to do that. And so I got into the therapy space. I moved from basically Charlotte, North Carolina to Dallas, Texas. And I had never stepped foot in Texas. I was working at a behavioral health hospital. And, a behavioral health hospital is a very unique place in and of itself. Working with a lot of mental disorders. I'm doing group therapies with 7 to 10 people at a time. And I get out and I'm like, all right, I met this girl. I want to stay in Dallas because, I want to see where this goes. So I'm trying to look for a job. And so again, analytics has not even crossed my mind at this point. But I get a job at a nonprofit, and I'm working kind of like as almost like a caretaker. And they have a job opening for what they call the data collection specialist and analyst. Never heard of it in my life, but my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, was like, "Hey, you should just apply." So I applied. The work was mostly in Excel. It was mostly Excel, collecting data, submitting it for grants. And lo and behold, I got the job. And later they told me I was the only applicant. And so it was meant to be, apparently, because if anybody else had applied, I don't think I would have gotten the job. I was in that job for a little bit, and I was introduced to like Salesforce and SQL through that job, and I just fell in love with SQL and started studying it like 4 hours a night for like a month straight. just because I literally became obsessed. I took so many courses. I've tried every flavor of SQL that you can imagine. And, soon enough, I was like, hey, I think I could really make a career out of this instead of just kind of getting by. And so I really dedicated a lot of time and effort into studying everything I thought I might need to know. And so I got my first job at a healthcare analytics company. That was my first real data analyst job, I would say. And then about a year after that, I got what I would consider like, my big job, my big break in data analytics space, which was I now work at a Fortune 500 company as a data analyst on a data science team. And so that's really from start to finish, like how I got into this space. It was 100%. None of this was planned. I didn't even know what a data analyst was until I started researching it about 5 years ago. And so, I can guarantee you that this was not my life goal. This was not something I dreamed about since I was a kid. Quite the opposite. And so, but I'm extremely happy that this career path found me. And so, I guess that's the best way to tell my my story.
Well, I like what you just said right there, that the career path found you.
Mhm.
I feel like although our stories are completely different, that it was very much the same thing where the career path found me as well, where, I went down these roads, I followed my interests, in your case, you followed your heart quite a bit as
Right.
well there. And, you eventually found yourself in a role, or you chased more of the things that you liked about that role you were in. And eventually it led you into a really awesome career.
Right.
And it's not that you have to know what you wanted to do at every step of the way, right? It's that you caught onto something, you found something you were really interested in, and frankly, probably pretty good at,
Mhm.
and you just tugged on that rope and kind of saw where it led you. And I think part of career fulfillment and part of like enjoyment in that process is just continuing to tug on that rope and seeing
Right.
like where it gets you and what you can learn, and where you develop your skills. And um, you know you have to have some action, right? You have to be moving
Right.
to figure out what the next step is a lot of the time.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm still doing that to this day. I mean, every single day I'm like, hey, let me learn a little bit of this. Let me try this, let me start a YouTube channel. Let me see if that works out. And, it's like you just kind of go these different things and you see if it works, if it doesn't work, if it's really interesting to you. And, that's kind of, I don't know, that's how I've lived a lot of my life, is like just seeing if I like it. And if I do, I keep trying it and see where it takes me. And yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, at least a lot of people on my channel who reach out to me, they're like, I'm a teacher, an accountant, I'm doing this, but I'm really interested in analytics. I see that all the time. And so I know that I'm not the only one who's like completely random field who's trying to get into this. There's a real interest in a lot of different spaces.
That's awesome. And something there are two other things I'd like to explore a bit more in your journey. And so the first is, all of this happened is post college. Is that correct?
Right.
That's awesome. So it does, one, show that you can break into this field after having essentially no background in it. I mean, it's the same for data
Right.
science. I think it's probably like one step, like in some sense, is one step further that you have to go. But I also love that you were able to learn most of these skills on your own.
Mhm.
And I'd like to understand how it was going about learning those skills while you were clearly working, and also while you had someone you're recording, like a family you're trying to start here. um, Balancing those three things has never been one of my strengths. I can only
Mm.
usually do two of those buckets, and I guess like health is another bucket, which kind of fluctuates in and out. You have any secret tips that I might have to leverage later on?
Well, I've completely given up on my health. That's like the least of my worries at the moment. That's 2 years ago. I was like, you know what? In the hierarchy of what I'm trying to do, I was like, the health, that's the least of my concerns. Um, but during the studying, yeah, I had just gotten married to my wife. And basically, I was just mostly on Udemy at the very beginning. And I was taking lots of SQL courses, Tableau courses, Python, and I was learning every single thing you can imagine in Python, like artificial intelligence, and I'm like, now looking back, I was like, I wish I knew what I was supposed to learn because I wasted weeks of learning like random things that I've never used and I don't think I will ever use. But it was mostly Udemy. I eventually switched over a little bit, actually most of my studying over to Coursera because I was spending so much money on Udemy because I just took too many courses. My time spent on those, I was doing at least 4 hours a night, and I was extremely focused on learning these things because as a newly married man, I was like, I got to start providing for my family. I really I got to step up a little bit because my wife was making like double or maybe triple than I was at that time, and so I was like, I'm okay with that, but I'd like to eventually help a little bit more, and so that was my real motivation for working as hard as I did, is because I felt it was more internal pressure to really want to succeed for my family. And so, yeah, I think that, if I were to start over again, I would probably take the same route. And I get a lot of people asking me, well, if you were to start over again, would you do a boot camp? If you were to start over, would you, take like the Udacity Nano degree, like all of these different topics and areas? And personally, I'm like, look, there are a ton of different options that you can take. But I think the biggest one is being committed and learning on your own first. And if later down the path, it leads you towards a boot camp or it leads you to something else, that's great. But you've spent a lot of initial time learning all the basics, all the fundamentals, where you can now really benefit from something like that instead of starting from scratch at like a boot camp or something. But I have lots of opinions on boot camps and stuff. I don't know if we want to get into those. I don't know your opinion on that, to be honest.
That's fair. Well, I think we probably fall into a similar camp there. I'm a big believer that as a data analyst, as a data scientist, a lot of the stuff you have to figure it out on your own for the most part. You're
Right.
constantly Googling stuff. There's no guidebook for how to do it, right?
Right.
As many videos as I make, as many videos as you make, we're never going to be able to solve the puzzle for every single person. We can't tell you exactly what to do when you see this in this analysis. That's just not how it works. The fun part of it is that it's like a dynamic experience. It's a dynamic game. It's changing. Every data set you're working with is different. Every tool has its nuances. Every business stakeholder has different things that they want. And you have to figure it out, a lot of the stuff out yourself. Like if you have a mentor and they're always telling you what to do, you're going to panic when you see something you haven't seen before. Right. And, it can be really scary. You can almost get like paralyzed when you don't know what step is next early on. But if you're one of those types of people that can push through that and, come to a solution or be able to find this self-reliance, I feel like that is, maybe the most important skill you can develop in this field. I think mentors are fine. I think, having really structured learning pathways are fine, but like, you don't want to go so far down that route that you deprive yourself of like what I believe to be one of the most important learning lessons that you can have.
Yeah. I don't, this may be on topic, it may not be, but, I always have felt, well, I used to always feel like I was the stupidest person in the room. Every job I was like, man, everyone has got this figured out. Everybody knows what they're doing. They got all their ducks in a row. Now that I've kind of like pushed through that, I realize that everyone on some level is the stupidest person in the room because on different subjects, on different topics, like this person doesn't know anything about the stuff that you know. You may not know the stuff that they know. And so I've gone very quickly from, well, maybe not very quickly. It took me a few years from feeling like I really didn't know anything. And I was like, how does everybody know this? To learning that everyone's kind of in the same boat. Everyone's doing everyone's researching stuff and Googling things and they're all trying to figure it out too. And so it made me feel a lot better. I have a few good friends at my work now who are just really great people. And, I talk to them a lot about this stuff and, something that one of them said was, I felt like a huge imposter when I first got into this field. And he's been in it for like 10 years. And so I was like, why do you still feel like that? And he's like, well, I still sometimes get that feeling because everyone around me is so intelligent. I'm like, well, I look at you and I think you're like a genius. And he's like, well, I look at you and I think you're a genius. I'm like, I'm like, that's the thing is
We just
it's
become best friends.
exactly. It's like, whoa, like we just had a moment. And so, it really feels like, everyone's in that same space of you're going to have to do a lot of research. You're going to have to look things up. You have to rely on yourself a lot. And so when you look at somebody else and feel like they have it all figured out, typically they're kind of in that same boat of, I know a lot of things, but I have to also look up a lot of things. And so I know now what I don't know and what I know I'm going to have to look up. And so I'm pretty forthcoming with that with like my colleagues. They're like, hey, do you know this? I'm like, yeah, I'll Google it.
Well, I've been hopefully fairly open with my own experience with imposter syndrome. I still feel it. Putting videos on the internet,
Mhm.
like who am I to teach other people this stuff, right? Like I've worked in this field for some time, but I don't have a PhD. I'm not a researcher. There's limits to the things that, the time or the interest that I have in really like learning some of the extremely advanced stuff.
Right.
But even at that point, there's still things that hopefully I can help people with. Whether I try not to tell people exactly what to do, which I
Mhm.
guess I do quite a bit nowadays. But people can still learn from my experiences. They can still learn from the things that I do, and I can still, again, hopefully add value to a company or an organization with the
Yeah.
things that I do know, not the things that I don't know. I mean,
Right.
there's never going to be a data analyst, a data scientist that knows everything about the domain, right? It just
Right.
doesn't happen. So you should just kind of pick the parts that your strengths are and hope they match up to your organization's requirements.
Right.
And you'll have a pretty successful career if you do that either way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think my strengths were in healthcare, and I really focused intensely on getting into the healthcare analytics space, and that really worked out for me. And so, if I was to go into some other field, like finance or something, I'd be genuinely terrible at like if you put me in like a financial like area, just not my thing. And so, yeah, I try to focus on the things that I'm good at, and just know the things that I'm bad at so that I can be aware of them, and try to improve them over time. But I got my bread and butter. I know what I'm good at. Like if you can give me a task in this area, I'll do very well.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that you kind of water your strengths and maintain your weaknesses.
Hmm.
Like we, I kind of think there's some things that we might have a little bit of a cap on. Like there are some areas of data science that I know I'm probably never going to put enough effort into them to be incredible at them, right? And so it's like I should still have an understanding of them. I should still know them, but like it's not worth my time to invest too much time in them because I
Hmm.
get majorly diminishing marginal returns focusing in that area. If I
Right.
focus on my strengths, which I have more interest in, which I have probably more aptitude for, I get way better returns because every hour I spend on that, I actually get, 2 hours worth of value rather than zero point 0.5 hours worth of value in that other area. So I completely get that. And, that's one of the reasons I've stayed primarily in sports is that I like those types of problems. I feel
Hmm.
like if you understand a domain, you have a definitive advantage in talking about it,
Yeah,
especially a very small domain like golf. There aren't that many people that do analytics related to the space. So it's
that
kind
is
of
very
like,
true.
you know, even if I'm not an authority, I'm one of the few people that have a voice in that space. And so
Hmm.
people will probably listen if they Google golf analytics or something like that. But I'm interested in your take, obviously, on subject area expertise and how someone can build that. So, you worked in healthcare analytics to start with, and you've kind of, taken your career in steps, I guess, continuing down that road.
Right.
But, how did, and you a little bit fell into it because you were in healthcare before,
Right.
but, how, what would you recommend people to do to establish more of that subject area expertise if you can?
Yeah, that's a really good question and something I actually get asked a lot because I talk about that quite often where I'm like, it's not only about technical skills. It's like something that will really set you apart in the market is having the domain knowledge. So everyone asks, how do you get the domain knowledge? I can only speak for myself and how I learned the healthcare stuff. I learned enough healthcare stuff in, school and all that, and learning it in course classes and things like that. I think that talking to someone in that field is 10 out of 10 the biggest thing I would recommend. Because if somebody, and I've had many, many, many people come to me and ask specifically, I want to get into healthcare analytics. What should I know? And I can rattle off a ton of stuff. Like I can rattle off 30 things off the top of my head that they should know. I'm like claims data, ICD codes, CPT codes, LOINC, all these things. I'm like, these are things that I use every single day. And if you want to get into the space, these are things that you should do research on. And I can provide some things that, I actually work with and data sets and stuff like that, because I have that subject matter expert. I know this domain really well. And so oftentimes, people are like, well, I want to get into healthcare. Do I need to go back and get like a master's degree in healthcare? Do I need to go take this? And I'm like, well, just talk to somebody. Talk to somebody and like Google it. You can learn so much just by doing those two things, and it's very it's a lot less time consuming, and it's typically very much free. And you can learn a lot about. You can ask more questions, right? Maybe you make a mentor out of that. You can keep asking them questions; they can keep guiding you. But you can learn a ton of very domain specific things just by talking to people in that profession. And that's probably my biggest advice to that is my biggest advice to a lot of people, is try to just engage with someone in that domain, in that field that you want to be in.
I love that. I mean, something that almost echoes what you're saying exactly is if I was looking for a new position, I would find people who have the job that I want to have and ask them how they got there. Right.
Exactly.
I wouldn't ask them to help me get there. I just ask them what they did. Hopefully I'd be willing to give something in return if I could, or, like learn their story and approach them in an effective way. Something I also really like about your story is that, it isn't like you made this huge jump into analytics, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were working in healthcare and it sort of in medicine, right? And like, you just slowly moved shades and shades away from that, right? It was never like this jumping off of one cliff to another. It's like, it's a gradient. And right. I think a lot of people, when they're trying to transition into data roles, they think they have to completely forget their past. So you'd mentioned someone as a teacher that they're looking into to get into a different space. It's like, leverage that. Like, you're a teacher, try and work somewhere in education and kind of move that role. And, after a couple of years, if you've slowly transitioned over time, you might be able to work in just a pure data analyst role in whatever domain you want. But, why forget about your past? You put in a lot of work. It's not like a sunk cost scenario. Like, you can still leverage that to be in your favor, or to create opportunities, because, I mean, it's not just you and me saying this. Like, people in business know that subject area expertise is important, right? If I have someone come in, they're the greatest data scientist that I've ever interviewed for one of our roles, and they don't understand how the game of golf works, right? They've never, they like don't understand what a par 4 is, or like they don't understand the basics of the game. That's like almost as much work to explain that to them as it is for them to, right?
That's like a problem for sure.
Like, there's just these levels of nuance that take time and take understanding and take interest. And, I doubt someone who's never, again, like I'm using golf as an example, who's never played golf and like had never read about golf or didn't understand how the rules work, they wouldn't really have that interest to dive into it that much further. Right. I mean, that's also a barrier.
If you haven't picked up golf by like 30, you definitely don't have much interest in it. Exactly. I mean, that's just my opinion. I picked up golf many, many years ago. And so I know I'm going to be doing that when I'm like 70 years old. I'll be the guy like just absolutely shanking it into the bushes. And I'm just going to have a blast out there on the course and just forget about everyone else.
Well, that is something, I guess, like, it's not a spoiler, but it's a like surprise alert, is that you and I both have in common. We both played college golf. So that's something that I don't know if a lot of other people in the data space have under their belt. Are there any lessons that you learned from golf that you can apply to the data analyst career or anything along those lines?
Oof. I mean, I can find a connection anywhere. I honestly can, but I don't know if there's a direct correlation. Teamwork, believe it or golf is an individual game, but it's also a team game, a mental team game. You talk to your teammates and, you strategize and you talk about a plan going on each hole, like how you're going to approach each hole, what club you're going to use. Golf is very much it's like, it's like analytics. It really is. It's an individual thing. You have to get your work done, but you need to work with your teammates and you need to strategize on each piece of the puzzle and your approach to it to make sure you're on the same page. I think that is the biggest stretch that I can make to kind of tie those two together.
I will say, for me, it's like a very quantifiable game, right?
Mm-hmm, that's true.
You're counting every stroke. There's like a tremendous amount of nuance into how you get the ball in the hole, and hopefully you can track a lot of that on paper, and you can also figure out very easily exactly where you're losing your strokes or you're missing out on opportunities. Mm-hmm. And obviously I've told this story many times, but that's one of the reasons why I got into like data analytics or data science, is because I just wanted to improve and track my own data. And yes, I did get made fun of a lot by my teammates, but it is I look back fondly on those parts. But I guess changing gears just a little bit, I'd love to hear more about your content creation journey, how you got interested in YouTube, what that experience was like. I have a couple more questions about your like data analytics versus data science that we can get to after this.
Okay. Yeah, the YouTube thing, it was just a completely new thing to me. I originally started a channel reviewing watches. I love watches. And so I had my like iPhone 6S or whatever that was. And I did reviews of watches just because I was kind of interested in making videos. I wasn't sure if I would be good at them. I quickly realized that you need a lot of money to keep buying watches in order to keep making videos. And I was like, whoa. I was like, I gotta scale this back. So I stopped doing those videos. But what really brought me into the space was when I was first learning. I did a lot of learning through YouTube as well. I definitely said I learned through YouTube or through Udemy videos, courses, but I also learned a ton through YouTube. And what was really tough is I kept trying to piece together information about the analytics space. And it was really hard for me to kind of get everything in one place, find a YouTuber that I liked that could give a lot of the information that I needed. And so I really went into the analytics space pretty blind. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what salaries to expect, where to learn, what to do. I kind of figured it all on my own, to be honest. And the that I had with this channel is eventually, and this is still my goal. So, it's after a year, it's still ongoing. I want to create a one-stop shop for people who want to become data analysts. I want them to have it basically a completely free resource to learn about, salaries and what they need to learn, timeframes. And I'm also doing tutorials on SQL. I'm about to finish my SQL series. So I've done, in a beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And then I'm going to go on to things like Tableau, Excel, Python, and hopefully, in maybe like a year or two's time, have everything that someone would need at least to get started, and all the resources that they could possibly need in one place so that they wouldn't have to, piece it together like I did. That was the vision for the channel. And, I'm slowly getting there. I'm slowly like, hitting what I'm trying to do and get there. And so, in 4 years, someone will find my channel and it'll have everything. And that's my goal is just to, is just to be a really good resource so that people don't feel the way that I felt trying to get into the space, which was very much, I felt, not to get too serious, I felt very much alone. And I was like, nobody else is doing this. Nobody else is like completely changing careers. No one else is like I was like, nobody's doing this. And so I want people to know that there's a lot of people that do that. It's very normal. And here's what you can do to become a data analyst. And so that's kind of been my journey so far. And I have some really huge goals for, a year or two down the road. But that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Can you talk about some of those goals? Are you willing to
Yeah,
put those?
yeah.
Let's put them on the
I
air,
mean,
man. Let's actualize them right here,
I
right
will.
now.
I'll speak them out because they're going to happen. I don't mind talking about them. Um, the first thing is I am a huge believer in courses, and so I have plans to make full courses. The ones I do on YouTube are to really hit the highlights, right? The big stuff that I know you need to know. The courses that I'm going to make, which will be on NeoSQL, and the first one I'm going to make is Tableau. Next one will be SQL, then Excel, Python. Those ones are going to go much more in depth into the things specifically for analysts, data, or data analyst, data science type stuff. Not more generalized, because Python can be very generalized. So can Excel. So can SQL to other positions like data engineers, data architects. I wanted this to be very specific towards our type of population who watch our videos. That is I would consider my bigger goals in the next 2 years or 3 years. That's what I want to do. Video wise on my channel, I want to incorporate. I want to kind of broaden a little bit. I have some, and this one is a pipe dream, so don't quote me on this one. I want to create some data analyst songs. And I'm speaking this out there because if I don't say it, I don't know if I'll do it. And
Well,
so
it's there now.
This is me like speaking it out into existence. I've been told I have an okay voice. I want to, bring some humor onto my channel because, if you've ever watched my channel, my humor is very dry humor. I don't have a lot of like laugh out loud kind of stuff, I don't think. And so I want to bring more like humor to my channel through song and through music. And I play a few different instruments that I will most likely be playing. That is like one of those things that it's kind of like on my wish list. I hope one day I have the guts to like actually do it.
There
So I
is
think
precedent. I mean, Josh Sarmer does a bunch of riffs to start off his videos, and
someone's already doing it.
I wouldn't say he's done any full songs, but I would look at the StatQuest videos. I mean, his is not in data analytics. It's almost exclusively focused on statistics.
Oh, fantastic!
But, yeah. So you got like a perfect scenario where there's case study, but it's not the exact same thing that you're trying to do. So
perfect. I'm just gonna go take what he has and just change the tune a little bit. No, I won't do that. I promise. I already started writing a little bit, and they are. I think they make me laugh. Just here, I burst out laughing every time I like sing it out loud. I think it's just so ridiculous. And I will not sing. I will not go into what it is. I'm just gonna tell you that when it comes out, I want you to listen to it and listen to the words very carefully. They're gonna speak to you on a deep level as a data scientist.
Well, you have to get past laughing as you're singing it because that doesn't make for a great performance. But
it's going to be very serious. My type of humor is very like, if you've ever seen the show The Office, I like to think that my humor is much more dry. I don't tend to laugh at my own stuff. Every so often I do, but most of the time I'm like, I just say something and I just kind of leave it there for a second and then I move on. And so no, I don't think I'll be laughing. I'll try to make it serious but fun.
See, I'm the opposite. I probably laugh at every single one of my own jokes, and it's both my worst and probably greatest character trait.
Yeah, that's why people like you.
Exactly.
I would say like when I'm making videos, I feel like I have a little bit of different personality than when I'm with a friend. When I'm with a friend, I'm extremely outgoing. I laugh 24/7. In my videos, I'm like, all right, I can't just laugh the whole time. I have to talk. And so it's a little different.
And I've been very slowly bridging that gap, kind of injecting a bit more of my personality into each additional video.
Yeah.
And my viewership has just tanked, so I guess I've got to stop.
This is working out horribly. My personality is killing my channel.
I know. If I could just be a robot again. So I actually do have a question related to content and generation. So
yeah,
a while ago you were posting some pretty controversial stuff on LinkedIn. Sure. I'd love to hear more about that. You were making some pretty divisive statements.
Go ahead.
Some people were pissed.
No, I didn't. I had no idea.
you
So
get
I was actually
any death threats or?
no, I was expecting some, but none. I was just talking to Tina about this last night because I jumped on a call just to chat with her, and she asked me the exact same question. She's like, "Why did you do this?" She's like, "You know, a lot of people got really upset at this."
I know
I
why
was
you
like,
did it, without a doubt. That is clear as day to me. But I'd like to
so
hear you say it.
so here was the real inception of it, and it was nothing beyond me just wanting to um, push people's buttons a little bit. I have a friend who's on LinkedIn, and I see him commenting on lots of stuff. And him and I like to go back and forth on things. And somebody else had posted something about there. It was really politically correct in this space. Like there's use cases for both Python and R. Like neither one is better than the other. And my friend wrote in there. He's like, yes. He's like, neither one is better. They're both great. And I just wanted to be like, screw this guy, because we're friends. I can do that. I was like, screw this guy. I'm posting like my opinion. I was like, Python is better than R. And so that was, I think, the one that definitely got the most reaction from it, because everyone comes out of the woodwork to defend their side or to tell me I'm wrong or to be like screw you or whatever. And so that really was the inception of it. I didn't do it. A lot of people think because I'm a YouTuber, I do things to
That are
you know,
controversial.
yeah, choose something controversial. And when I did it, I promise you, I was just trying to piss off my friend. And so then it just kind of like really grew. And I got a lot of messages, people asking me why this, why that. And so I wanted to keep doing it just to just to keep going with it. And so, I went into different topics. But that really was the inception of it. I had no intention of it, being a huge thing. I just was hoping my friend would see it and like be mad at me.
Well, I mean, I obviously knew there was nothing malicious about it. I figured it's like a very good way to start a conversation, right? If you take a side on the internet, someone's going to disagree with you somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and if you take a side of something that there is a lot of debate around very publicly, that's also great. It's like, in my mind, that's a great way to generate buzz or content or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anything wrong with it. I just thought it was a very funny, a very funny.
I saw you post. I saw you commenting on a few of them.
It was more just shocked face.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think that a lot of people tend to be a little bit more PC about things. And to be fair, I do too on certain subjects. But there are some things where I'm just like, does this really need to be something that we can just like all agree on? I'm like, look, let's have some fun with like just disagreeing, explaining why. And I purposefully didn't inject myself into the comments. A lot of people were like, Alex, why are you saying this? Tell us, we're begging you. I'm like, guys, just like, hold on, it's okay. Just, have a conversation with somebody, enjoy. And so the comment section was filled with just like hundreds of people chatting about it and like arguing. And it was, I read every single one. It was extremely interesting. But I knew if I had just gone in there and been like, this is my answer, people would have either hated me and been like, no, you are the worst. I'm unfollowing you. I'm never like watching your channel again. But or it just would have stopped there. Right. And people would have been like, well, that's his answer. All right. There you go. And so I didn't want to interject in what I would consider a naturally beautiful thing.
Well, you should make a video. Actually, I'll probably title this podcast "Why He Pissed Off the Entire Data Community." That'll be a pretty good one.
That's a good title. I would run with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's worth making a video on that. I think that's kind of fun. That's a good topic because at the end of the day, right, it's not like Python or R, it's not that serious, right? Like people really take sides. And my philosophy has almost always been like, you should use the best tool for the problem that you're working with, right? Yeah. Sometimes that'll be R. For me, more often than not, it's Python, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm sure there are some use cases that, okay, R makes sense, whatever that might be. Yeah. But, for you, like in your specific job, probably the case that Python is better than R. Like cut and dry for most of the things you do, right? And that's okay.
It is 100%. And, genuinely, for everyone who's out there listening, I am more on the spectrum of it really just depends on what you use it for, your use cases. And so I actually agree with everyone who was saying that. I just didn't want to tell them I agreed with them because I knew it'd piss them off more. And so, there is a sense of, I just said it because I wanted to make people mad and stir up controversy, specifically with my friend, but also, I truly do believe with everything that I had said on all those several posts is that everybody has their specialty. And for me, Python is like my thing. I love Python and I use it all the time. And I have a lot of fun with it. And so for me, I know that I would never switch. I'm not ever going to switch to R. And I've tried to learn it and I know it well enough, but I'm not going to invest a lot of time in it too. And so for me personally, Python is like just way better.
Well, the data suggests that I looked at earlier this year that Python is a lot more used in the space. Yes, and that doesn't mean it's better. That doesn't mean it's worse.
Right.
But if you were looking to get a data science job, in that sense, you're if you know both, probably the best. But if you know Python, you're opening more doors for yourself.
And that's super true. And something that a lot of people were asking me after I started doing that, or after I posted those, was, should I learn both? Do I need to learn one over the other? And I was like, if I was just starting out, I would just learn the ones that are the most popular. It's going to open up the most doors. I was like, and you can always branch off and learn, whatever.
If you know one, it's a lot easier to learn another than to start learning two.
Exactly. And so I'm like, just go with the most popular one. You're going to have the most opportunities, the most, open doors through learning the like Tableau over Power BI. I was like, it's just a fact. Tableau is bigger. And so, if you want to have more job openings for that, I said, go with that. And so that's my rationale for when I give people that specific advice.
It's interesting. The same concept has come up a couple times, and I think we've named it like a greedy approach to learning. Like you have greedy algorithms and I guess computer science, and like you want to take the option that you have right now that you're faced with that gives you the most opportunity, right? And if we're choosing programming languages, if we're choosing visualization tools, like look at the knowledge that you have right now and make that decision based on most possible upside. And I think that simplifies everything because so many people think about so many different scenarios. And it's just really not that complicated if we don't complicate it ourselves,
Yeah. Oh, I started learning like completely random programming languages, probably like maybe a year and a half ago. I was learning like Scala, which I now actually use a little bit. But back then I had no use for it at all. And I spent hours and hours and hours trying to learn it because I heard it was like a new emerging kind of thing. I don't remember exactly.
Only Twitter uses it now. So
and I never ever touched it. And so, from personal experience, I've learned a lot of, I've done so many things wrong. I can kind of give a little advice on what to do right.
I love it. All right. So let's change gears one last time, or like one penultimate time, towards like this data analyst versus data scientist conversation. So You said you're a data analyst that works on a team with data scientists. Like in your specific role, can you talk about what the differences are between like the workflows or whatever that might be?
Yeah. My team the team that I'm on. It's pretty big. We have database developers, we have data engineers, data architects, data analysts, business analysts, data scientists. So we have the whole gambit. And everybody plays a role and they all overlap in some way, right? My work a little overlaps with data science. It overlaps a little bit with data engineers. It overlaps a little bit. So, when I'm talking about this, the biggest thing for me is that we're not in our own little boxes, right? Something that I do a lot in my job is like more on the ETL side of things. Getting the data in, mapping the data, transforming the data. I do a lot of that. And so when, the data scientists need their stuff, they will sometimes help me with that. Although that is not their primary, the data scientists that we work with at least, they're mostly doing the models. They're doing the statistics. We have lots of statisticians who were statisticians who are now data scientists. And so they are the ones who are doing all the modeling, all of that side of the work. They are not doing what some might consider the traditional data science stuff, where they're also doing the ETL stuff. And so, part of it is just knowing we have such a large team. Everybody has kind of their specialty. And so to me, the real difference is that, when I'm bringing the data in and I'm doing my analysis and I'm doing the data cleaning and everything, the analysis that I end up doing with that data typically is going towards our things like our commercial team, and like our product development team for like, where is our data right now? What do our numbers look like right now? Where are our sales at right now? Do we have, um, are we getting really good data from these specific hospitals, practices, all these things? And I can tell them right now is like, here are the specific practices that aren't doing well, for whatever reason. And we try to track that down, help them get more useful, better data, right? And that's a lot of it goes a lot beyond that, but that's, in a nutshell, a little bit about how I see my role. The data scientists, they are taking the data and they are doing, what I would consider very different work. They're projecting into the future, a lot of, which, and again, if you guys don't know, I work in pharmaceuticals. I work in the pharmaceutical space. So for drug prices and, which drugs are needing, which drugs are people going to need, like that's not my thing. But they're projecting onto the future. Here's what we're going to need in this supply in this area in this location from these people. It's definitely, it's different how they're using the data, and they do a lot more in that modeling. Because, and honestly, I'm not an expert in the modeling stuff, so don't quote me on this. But in the modeling, they're using a bunch of these different models, and they sometimes will run the same data set through many models to try to find the best one. And so, again, that's not my area of expertise by any means, but I don't do anything with machine learning or really heavy statistics where they do. And so to me, that's the biggest difference. They're doing a lot of machine learning, modeling, statistics, or mine's a lot of ETL analysis in the here and now, to make an impact today instead of forecasting for the future.
That's awesome. Something that is different from how I've explained data science before. So I usually use like what part of the pipeline they're working on. Like data analysts are usually closer to that, like, data collection, cleaning, EDA, and then maybe some of the model building. And then data scientists can, in theory, fall across that whole spectrum. Some data scientists can be called data scientists and be doing exactly the same work that you're doing right now, right?
That's true.
But you brought in this like time component, right? Where most data analysts, they're doing work that helps people help people make decision in the near future. And sometimes you're doing like annual planning, whatever it is, or looking back historically, but you're enabling people to make those decisions for usually a shorter time frame than some data scientists. Like data scientists, they're trying to predict far into the future. They're trying to build systems that enable us to make decisions for the next couple of years, or like large structural decisions, rather than like more fast-paced management decisions. It's either that, or they're creating systems that help like automate some of the decision making as well. And so I think maybe breaking it into those buckets as well. I mean, those aren't necessarily like set in stone either, but that can also help explain the difference between these roles. And that's not something I've ever really talked about, is that like that nature is, we can break it down by time or by function a little bit as well there, which is kind of fun, right?
Yeah, and you're completely right in that the traditional roles, there are a lot of positions where they are in the traditional roles, and exactly like those buckets, 100%. My team is just, we all do everything. We all do a lot of the same work. We just have our specialties. But I do a little bit of the database development, data engineering stuff. I do a little bit of the business analytic stuff. I do data. So we're all kind of overlapping, and so we all know how to kind of do each other's work. So if tomorrow, God forbid, I died, like my team would be able to pick up my work because they all kind of already are in it a little bit. And so it just depends on the team, because sometimes you have very regimented, structured, like this is what the data scientist does, this is what the data analyst does. But yeah, it's just, I guess it's just team, every company is going to do things differently or see those roles in a different way.
Well, I think the way your organization's run is definitely a better thing because, again, if something happened, I'm not going to say you dropped dead, but let's say you slept in for a day and for some reason, oddly,
Sure.
um, it is really important to be able to pick up. And that's why a lot of organizations use Scrum or different frameworks where everyone's reporting what they're working on every day and
Right.
keeping people in the loop. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like a fun nuance is that, we talk about it being a challenge because a lot of these people can flex across roles and the roles are poorly defined, but it's not always a bad thing. It means that teams can sometimes flow together a little bit better, or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
My question is, are you interested in doing more of the modeling, or, does that pique your interest, or do you just love what you do in place? Are you going to have to change your channel to Alex, the data scientist, instead of Alex, the analyst one day?
I've thought and I've meditated on this for a long time. My genuine answer is I've actually taken many courses on machine learning. I feel like I'm actually fairly decent at it. That is just not my calling. I do understand it. I understand the value in it. I just personally do not enjoy it. And so for everyone out there who's like that's the love of your life is like modeling and stuff. Look, I let her get away on purpose because
So we could have her.
yeah. I was like that's for you guys. My real passion and I say this more in like I like it. I don't know if I'll ever fully commit myself to make that transition. I really love data engineering. I love building the databases. I love creating the ETL pipelines. I find that even more fascinating than the machine learning stuff to me. And I have a lot of people just like ask me why. Why would you choose data engineering over data science? Like data science is the thing. And you're like, you could do it. I was like, you're right. Maybe I could, and I could probably make more money. That's just not. It's not something that I personally want to do. And I know what my coworkers do, and I know other data scientists who work at other companies. And I've always they're like, hey, you should come work for us, and I'm like, no, that's not what I want to do with my life. And I respect the people who do it. There's nothing against this. Just I really like ETL side of stuff so much. I think it is just I'm a huge fan of automation. I've automated certain things in my job. Just in my spare time, I'm like, man, I'd really be cool if I could do this. So the automation part is just I don't know. To me, that is like a thrill ride when I can automate something. Just I get a kick out of it.
I think that that's a really important kind of concept, right? Is that the things that you enjoy should match your work, or you should be able to find those things. And it doesn't just have to be what society or like some people on the internet tell you is what you should want, right?
Right.
I mean, I have plenty of friends that they are, just like you. They probably could be a data scientist now if they wanted, but a lot of them love the storytelling side of like the data analytics, data analysis role, or the data analytics roles, right?
Yeah.
Like you're interfacing with stakeholders in a very different way, right? You're making recommendations. As a data scientist, sometimes you're doing that, but sometimes you're just explaining your models also. Or sometimes if you're, on the machine learning engineering spectrum, you're just building things and putting them into another bigger system, and like you're not talking to anyone, right?
Right.
And then there's the whole engineering side where like there's this whole level of order and organization and making sure everything is well connected. And like, yes, that's important in the machine learning engineering side and the data science side as well. But like, there's a lot of other things to worry about, right? You're training the model, you're figuring out there's so much testing, there's so much experimentation, there's all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't as systematic, it isn't as clear cut as some of the data engineering aspects are. That's not to say that data engineering is like a perfect science, right? But if you're looking at it on the spectrum compared to the bloat or the time complexity of doing machine learning, you probably can estimate how long an ETL will take you to put together or whatever that is. a lot easier than you can estimate how long it'll take you to get an optimal machine learning model for your use case. And I completely understand that. Those some things like that, they bother me as well, but I've chosen my path, and I at this point
there's no going back.
No going back. I also like the tinkering part, and luckily I'm not too much of a perfectionist, so I can we can let the model go out to production at some point. It's not like I just have to keep tweaking it.
Fair enough. And it seems like and you know what you said earlier about changing the name of the channel, I've genuinely have thought about that. I'm like, man, if I got a data engineering job, and can I keep my channel? Do I have to like pivot it to data engineering? Like, what do I do? So for now, it's just easier to keep my job.
Well, you could just always just change it to your real name. That's what everyone does once they reach a certain size anyway. So
that's true.
Because at a certain point, you're not going to be able to hide it very well.
Well, that's true. And I have my LinkedIn connected to my YouTube page anyways. And so I have lots of people who find me through that. And I don't mind people knowing me. I would like to say that my channel is like just a really good group of people. Like my community is super supportive, very welcoming and good. I don't know a lot of them. Some of them I know personally, but some of them I don't. But I really don't get like negative people on my channel. It's a lot of just super positive people who want to learn and are really excited about the field. And so I haven't had to worry about that lately. I hope I don't have to worry about that because as the channel grows, I know you get different people, and as you branch out in different topics, like if I did the singing thing, I would get completely different people coming in than my normal audience, and they might hate my voice, and they're just like, oh, we're bringing this guy down, and then they know me now, they found me. So it's very possible. The internet is a crazy place.
It is. I do think though it's if you grow at a steady pace and it's not like you're catapulted into stardom, you just like those things grow with you rather than it being like all of this all at once. So I think when the time comes, I mean, you have grown pretty fast, but I think when the time comes, if that does happen, you'll be ready for it.
And we'll see. I don't anticipate anything too crazy happening. Maybe the songs are just gonna be really good. I mean, I don't know.
I'll follow you on SoundCloud.
Yeah, I'm an up and coming artist, but I'm trying to really make it big. In
the data space,
in the data communities, music. Yeah, I can't justify that one. I'm gonna make it big somewhere.
You can call your first album "Making It Big," Data.
I'm not gonna name it that. That's terrible. I'll do it for you.
All right. Well, that is all the questions I had. Usually at the end of any of these interviews, I leave the floor open to you to talk about really anything you want. You can plug yourself, give last minute advice. You can talk about like your favorite TV show, or if you have a hobby of knitting or anything really. The floor is yours. That can be intimidating.
How much time do I have?
You've got, I'll cap you at like 12 minutes. Okay.
All right. So 11 minutes, 59 seconds. Here we go. I have a YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, it's Alex the Analyst. Check it out. I like to think it's okay. Some other people think it's okay. Not great, but
all his links will be in the description as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah. It's free. So, if you don't like it, you don't have to pay for it. No, what I guess my biggest advice, and I don't know if this is even the direct, I have 11 minutes to fill. So, my biggest advice really is just follow your passion. If you have a passion for this, like you can stick with, you can get through anything if you have a passion for it. And I tell that to my wife all the time. I was like, if you have a passion for each other, we can get through anything. And so it's the same thing. It's a marriage with, with this field. And so if you want to really be successful in this field, I highly recommend, testing it out, testing the waters, date around, try some different programming languages. Try some different tools and just get a feel for it before you marry it. And so, I think that is my biggest advice. My second biggest advice is obviously watch my channel. It's getting better and better. It's really good. Forget what I said earlier. It's a really good channel. Excuse me. What were the other things that you said I could talk about, like my hobbies?
You can talk about literally whatever you want. You don't have to fill all of this time.
I know I have a segment or a different episode where it's called the Alex the Analyst Show, and it's like 30 minutes to like 45 minutes, even an hour long sometimes. And at the end, when I'm done covering the serious stuff, I just go off on whatever. I'll talk about like the most random things, and it's genuinely my most enjoyable part of the show, because people who watch to the end are like, what on earth are you talking about, Alex? Like, I'm talking about my childhood at my grandma's house. I'm like, in speaking of, my grandma called me today and she was like, Alex, I heard you have some type of business, some type of channel. What is this? And she's like, bless her, she's like maybe 75, 80. So she doesn't really know what YouTube is. So I tried to explain it to her. I'm like, yeah, I create videos to help people become a data analyst. And she's like, well, that is amazing. She's like, you are just doing fantastic. I was like, Grandma, I really needed to hear that. Thank you so much.
You should get her on your channel. So my dad has made a couple of cameos.
Is that right?
And he's letting the fame go to his head a little bit. I had to kind of chip him down to size, but yeah, no, it's people love.
That's a great idea. I need to get because my grandma, like, bless her, she doesn't know anything about this, like, at all. She wouldn't know anything. It'd be really funny to get her reaction to, like, certain things in the data analyst world, and that would be a really good video.
I think I'm gonna do one of those videos where I'll probably have either both my parents or one of my parents on my podcast. Mm-hmm. And I might make a video about like explaining what I do to my parents, or like telling my parents I'm a data scientist or something like that.
Yeah.
And like, because I've explained to my mom what I do probably like 50 times, and she's like, Ken, what do you do again?
Yeah, no, I've tried many times to explain to my parents what it is, and I think on a very high level they understand. But honestly, I don't think they get it, and so
I'm pretty sure
I've kind of given up trying.
Think I just like do like beep boop computer stuff. My dad used to tell people, he still tells people, that I got my master's in IT, which is very different than computer science.
It's close, sure, same thing.
And I'm like, at a certain point, you just give up, and you're like, sure, Dad, I'll fix your computer. Like, Ken, the printer's not working again.
Yeah, that's 100% where I'm going. I was just talking to my mom the other day, and I think she thinks I'm doing like YouTube full time now, because she was like, how's the business? And I'm like, you mean my job? She's like, no, your business. You started your own business. So I was like, kinda, but not really. She's like, I thought you were doing that full time. I'm like, Mom, no, like, I just do it as like on the side. And so, yeah, you have to really, I have nothing against the generation before us. I love them in their own unique way, specifically my parents. But it's things have changed a lot since, they were in their prime working years. I hope my dad doesn't see this. And
make sure to forward it to him.
No, I'll send it to him. If I tell him I talked about him in something, I usually send it to him. But, he's getting up there. And so, these new sciences and computers and all that, that's not up his alley. And so he does not invested in it. He doesn't care about it. And what's really funny is I'll post my videos every so often on like LinkedIn, and he'll go and like them. And so I'll call him on like, hey, did you watch the video? Did you like it? He's like, I didn't watch it. I wouldn't understood it. He's like, I was just trying to support you, man. And I'm like, well, Dad, I appreciate it.
Thanks. I'll occasionally have my parents watch my videos if it's not like too technical.
Right.
And like, I think my dad and I have kind of a similar sense. I also I talk a lot of shit to my dad, and we have like a fun, like some internal jokes going. So, yeah. I think he like secretly enjoys them, just the bad jokes that I make and nothing else about it. But
right.
The bad jokes are outnumbered by the nerdy content. So maybe I'll make one video just for my dad where it's just me being a doofus.
That'd be a real bonding moment, for sure.
Well, he wants to be in more videos, so we'll see.
He's gonna make an offshoot. It's gonna be like Ken Jee's dad's channel or something.
Well, I forget. There's a comedian. He was in Silicon Valley, the show.
Okay.
That's the Asian guy. I can't remember his name.
I know exactly who you're talking about, but I don't know his name either.
But so he's a stand-up comedian. He has a really funny special on Amazon.
Oh my gosh.
He also has a YouTube channel where he cooks. I'll link his channel below because this is really funny. But
he's hilarious. I've watched his special on Netflix. It's hilarious.
Yeah, but so in the special he talks about how his dad was like, he's like, oh, you're an actor, like that's so easy. I could do that. And then he literally just got a bunch of legitimate acting jobs, and his dad was like, see,
yeah, his first job was like in front of like 500. It's like a show that had like 500 million people watch the show. Yeah, that was hilarious. That if anyone has not watched that, you need to watch it because it is so funny.
I think in the show his name's Jin Yang. I forget what his.
Yeah, no, I feel bad for not knowing it.
No, I'm gonna Google it right now.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, he was one of my favorite characters.
Jimmy O Yang. So it's pretty close.
That's it. Yeah, he was one of my favorite characters in Silicon Valley. I mean, his character was just ridiculous, and he everything he does is just hilarious.
I agree. All right, I think that's a good ending point for our babble. I definitely enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming in, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. I never thought in a million years I'd be right here where I am right now, but it's been an honor. I've really enjoyed doing this with you.
Look at us,
Exactly.